to revise the Articles, they ended up scrapping the whole thing and creating a new constitution. It's probably not because they didn't know what revise meant. So the delegates from the various states each had their own agendas at the Constitutional Convention, and that made it difficult for them to agree on what the new government should look like. In order to hammer out a constitution, they had to do something you don't see very much in government these days: compromise. Oh, let's compromise. I'm sorry, Eagle, I didn't mean. Before we get into what those compromises were, it's kind of necessary to look at what was so bad about the Articles government in the first place. The main thing was it really couldn't govern. There was no executive branch or president and no judiciary to settle disputes. It was basically just a Congress where each state was equally represented and they all pretty much had veto power and could sink legislation they didn't like. All decisions were collective, which meant that very few decisions were actually made, because it's really hard to get 13 people to agree on something that will be in the interest of all 13. I can barely agree with Stan on anything, right, Stan? He said wrong. Most important, the Articles government had no power to levy taxes, which meant that if it needed any money to do, well, anything, it had to ask for the money from the states, which were free to say, no, I don't think we'll be giving you any money today, or tomorrow, or ever. As I remember from my college years, and I don't remember much, living without money is awful. Without money, it's pretty much impossible for a government to do anything, except buy ramen noodles. The Articles government was able to accomplish one notable thing, though. One of the big issues it had to deal with was Americans moving out west, which in the 1770s and 80s meant to places like Ohio and Indiana that weren't states yet. The government managed to set up rules for these settlements in the Northwest Ordinance of 1787. This set up a system for eventual statehood, but most importantly, it forbade slavery in these territories, which, as students of American history know, was kind of a big deal. You wouldn't know that. You're not a student of American history. You're a symbol of America, bird. I'm not going to punch you. Other than that, though, the Articles government was a flop. And the very thing that made it so ineffective threatened to screw up any attempts at new government, too. This was the issue of competing interests between different states. More specifically, the states with large populations and the smaller states. Basically, a state with a large population, like, say, Virginia, had different needs than a state with a small population, like Delaware. More importantly, large states might stand to benefit more from any government spending. When the delegates decided to make a new Congress, these large population states wanted the number of representatives to that Congress to be proportional to the states' populations, which would mean that the larger states would have more representatives than the smaller ones. This idea, a large Congress made up of many delegates, was called the Virginia Plan because it was put forward by the delegates from Wisconsin. Just kidding, Virginia. The delegates from small New Jersey put forward a plan that would have a Congress where each state would send an equal number of representatives. In other words, something that looked a lot like the Articles government. This New Jersey plan would prevent smaller states from being dominated by the larger states, and also ensure that the large states wouldn't be able to vote themselves a bigger share of government spending. These two opposing interests threatened to scuttle the whole new government thing until Roger Sherman from Connecticut proposed the Great Compromise that gave us the bicameral legislature that we talked about in episode 2, and we've all come to know and love sometimes. So the Great Compromise meant that we would have a two-house legislature, but this wasn't the only issue related to how the seats in Congress would be apportioned. The membership in the House would be based on the state's population, but at the time there was an issue about how to count that population. The issue was slavery, more specifically, how to count slaves as part of the state's population. Let's go to the thought bubble. The states with large slave populations like South Carolina and Virginia had a pretty big interest in counting these slaves for the purposes of determining representation. And the states with few slaves didn't want them counted at all, because this would mean that the white non-slave people in those states with lots of slaves would effectively be better represented than the white non-slave people in the states with few slaves. The delegates at the Constitutional Convention solved this problem with another compromise that was decidedly less great. Article 1, Section 2 of the Constitution includes the following clause: representatives and direct taxes shall be apportioned among the several states which may be included within this union, according to the respective numbers, which shall be determined by adding to the whole number of free persons, including those bound to a service for a term of years, and excluding Indians not taxed, 3/5 of all other persons. If you're looking for the word slaves, you won't find it. They're the ones described by the phrase 3/5 of all other persons. This is the notorious 3/5 compromise. What it means is that in order to determine how many representatives a state has, you count the number of free people in the state, including indentured servants, and add to that number 3/5 of the number of non-free persons, otherwise known as slaves. So in terms of counting, each slave was worth 3/5 of each free person. Thanks, Thought Bubble. Anyway, this meant that the states with large populations of slaves would be disproportionately represented in Congress, but not quite so badly that most northern states with small numbers of slaves wouldn't vote for the Constitution. What this also did was enshrine the idea that slaves, who were mostly black, were worth less than free people, who were mostly white, and it embedded slavery into the Constitution. So before this Constitution of Compromise could go into effect, it had to be ratified by at least 9 of the 13 states. So each state had a special convention where delegates could vote on whether or not to adopt the new Constitution. These conventions were more open to the public than the Constitutional Convention itself, and the ratification process is the reason why some people say the Constitution is based on the will of the people. But not everybody wanted the Constitution, and they needed convincing. This is where things get a little confusing. Did you want the Constitution? Did you? In 1787, public opinion about the Constitution was pretty evenly divided. Those who wanted the Constitution were called Federalists, largely because of the Federalist Papers, a series of articles written by Alexander Hamilton, James Madison, and John Jay. They wrote the Federalist Papers to convince voters in New York to ratify the Constitution, and since New York did eventually ratify the document, I guess they worked. But we should listen to both sides of the argument in the Clone Zone. So joining us in the Clone Zone today will be Federalist Clone and Anti-Federalist Clone. Let's hear from Federalist Clone first. Fetty? Can I call you Fetty?
No. The Federalists were the incredibly intelligent Americans who thought that a strong central government would benefit the country as a whole. They tended to come from cities, and often they represented commercial classes, especially wealthy people who had lent money to the government during the Revolution. They liked the new Constitution because they felt that a strong national government would pay its debts, and this was good for business. They also tended to want stronger ties with England, again, because England was a good trading partner. Given the raging success of the Articles government, it's pretty clear that the Federalists were right.
Okay, now let's hear from Anti-Federalist Clone. How do you respond, Auntie? I'm not your aunt. Sure, Federalists were right to believe in tyranny. Anti-Federalists were right to be skeptical of a large government that would trample on our individual liberties. They didn't want a big government that would tax them to death and possibly take away their slaves. In general, Anti-Federalists felt that states would be the best protectors of people's rights and liberties because, being smaller, they would be more responsive to people's needs. Okay, the Anti-Federalists published pamphlets and articles too, but we weren't quite as organized, so we didn't have a coherent set of Anti-Federalist papers to push on government students. Okay, you seem really mad about this. I am. But you eventually lost the debate. I did.
Huzzah!
How come he got to shoot fireworks?
I didn't know he was going to
shoot
fireworks.
I'm sorry. Next time, you can have fireworks. So the Federalist position won out, and the Constitution was ratified, and that's the government that Americans have been living under ever since. Hooray! Because the Constitution was passed, we tend to think that everyone loved it, but it wasn't nearly as clear-cut as hindsight makes it appear. Eventually, the Federalists had to offer another compromise, promising a Bill of Rights in the first 10 amendments. This isn't called one of the constitutional compromises because it happened outside of the convention, but it was yet another example of how different interests had to give a little in order to get a constitution passed. It's very important to remember that compromise, the idea of balancing interests and giving a little to get a lot, is embedded in the Constitution. While today it seems like a political dirty word, compromise is the basis of the American government itself. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next week. Well, I'll compromise. See you in a week and a half. Let's face it, Stan's probably not going to get this done in time anyway. Crash Course Government and Politics is produced in association with PBS Digital Studios. Support for Crash Course U.S. Government comes from Vocal. Vocal supports nonprofits that use technology and media to advance social equity. Learn more about their mission and initiatives at vocal.org. Crash Course was made by all of these nice people at the Chad and Stacy Emmett studio in tropical Indianapolis. Thanks for watching. I'm going to the beach.
Hey, good evening, everyone. My name is Dan Whitfield. I'm the Democratic candidate running for United States Senate here in Arkansas to unseat and replace Senator John Boozman. And I do a weekly update Q&A live stream every Saturday evening about 6 p.m. Sorry, I'm a little bit late today. I had to restart my computer and do updates before I get my camera to be recognized. But let's go ahead and get started. It's probably going to be another short update this week because not a lot has happened over the last week. I've got my finals coming up for my school, and I've been working on my Accounting 2 project all week, and I still am not done with it, unfortunately. So let's go ahead and start with where we stand right now as far as event planning. So we are ready to go out and do events. I'm fully vaccinated. I went and got a haircut finally. It's not all like super long and curly anymore. So I'm ready to go do meet and greets, campaign rallies, and so on. If you would like to be in charge of facilitating one of these events or setting up a meet and greet, let me know and we can get something scheduled. And I'm also getting ready and planning my event, my campaign event kickoff, where we're going to have the media, a bunch of people show up and talk about, we'll have voter registration and different things like that, where everybody can come together, try to leave partisan politics aside and talk about the hope that we have for Arkansas in bringing actual representation to the legislative process. So I'm really excited for that. I haven't picked an exact date yet. It's either going to be maybe the 15th or the 22nd, possibly the 29th, depending on how busy I am between now and then. But we will be getting all of that set up and the information for that out here soon. So keep an eye out. I'm really excited. I can't wait to get out there and not necessarily shake hands, but bump some elbows and meet you all and listen to any concerns you guys have and your ideas on how I can better represent you in the legislative process. So I'm excited about all of that. Our volunteers keep growing every day. We're getting more volunteers. So if you would like to help replace Senator John Boozman, the GOP Republican U.S. Senator here in Arkansas, then please reach out and we can get you all set up with our volunteer team. We have our volunteer coordinator who is going to be reaching out to different people to get them organized into teams as well. But I'm excited. I hope you guys are excited. I see a lot of positivity coming through this negative legislative session. So now that we've seen exactly how far partisan our state can be, it's time to start bringing ourselves a little back more to the left since we've gone so far to the right, towards the center a little bit more. And we can do that through regular working class people like me running for office. So one thing that you do need to be asking yourself and you need to be thinking about is, can I run for office? We need to make sure that we have over 1,500 Democrats to run for positions all across our state, all the way from governor, lieutenant governor, secretary, state attorney general, commissioner of the lands, the state auditor, state treasurer, all these different positions in the higher branches of our state government. We also need to be focused on state legislators. We need to be focused on state senators, state representatives. We need to have our justices of the peace, school boards. There's so many important elections that are going to be happening in 2022. So make sure that you are considering running if it's something you can do. I know a biggest hurdle has been in the past filing fees, because filing fees are so ridiculously expensive. Unfortunately, Trent Garner's bill did not make it into law, so they will not be instituting mandatory minimum filing fees for political parties here in Arkansas, which means if you're currently represented by a Republican and they're running unopposed, then you can file to run against them as a Democratic challenger and have a $0 filing fee. So that means you can do something. You can help. We need to make sure that we are taking as many seats as possible. That way we can look back at this 93rd legislative session as something of the past that we never have to worry about again, where we have our state legislators targeting people based on their sexual identity, people based on their sexual orientation, just deeply assaulting women's rights and women's body rights. There's just so many different things that have been happening in our state on a negative level that we can change, but we have to have Democrats to run for office against these unopposed Republicans. So if you would like to find out how to run for office, reach out to me. My phone number is 479-418-6008. You can give me a call, send me a text message if you're more comfortable doing that. Shoot me an email at danwittcongress@gmail.com. You can go message me on social media or anything like that, and I will do what I can to link you with your county party to help you get organized and situated and ready to run. Because that's what we have to do. We have to get ready to run. It's already May. Oh my gosh, it is May. We've already passed our 100 days with this new presidential administration. Time is flying by. So make sure you do reach out, and I'll do everything I can to help get you pointed in the right direction to run for office. Anyone can do it. You can do it. We need more regular working class people to be in office if we're ever going to have actual representation. And I think that that's something, it's not easy to decide if I want to run for office or not. You have a little bit of time, but I mean, the longer you wait, the harder it is. Name recognition is huge when you run for office. And I think that's what's really going to give me an advantage over Senator John Boozman next year is the fact that I did run against Senator Tom Cotton and my name got out there. People know who I am. And because people know who I am, they're paying attention. And we're going to use this name recognition as much as we can in order to beat Senator John Boozman in 2022. Because flipping Arkansas blue in 2022 is something that we can do. We just have to organize. We have to mobilize. And more than anything, we have to unify as a party. We can't have any in-party fighting. We can't divide ourselves and have a separation of different Democratic branches. we have to come together and take our state back. And I believe we can do it. I really do. So I'm feeling really optimistic. I'm excited to see everything that's going to be happening and developing over these next few months. I'm actually trying to work on getting different Democratic candidates to team up together, and so that we can start campaigning around the state together and putting on events together and getting our names out there, our ideas out there, and listening together to what people would like us to do. So that's pretty much where I'm at for my update. There's not a whole lot to go over, unfortunately, as I've just been so busy with school. I had just finished my final legislative recap, so make sure you check that out. We talked about a bunch of the different bills that have become law this year in the Arkansas State Legislative Body. So, man, it was quite a year. Oh my gosh. I'm looking forward to never having to deal with such a partisan ideological session ever again. And we can do that by running for office. So I guess that's kind of all I've got. If you can volunteer to help us out, let me know, reach out. We're still fundraising. We're getting to the point now where we can start filing our FEC reports again. We're reaching that threshold, so I'm excited for that. We're building our funds up so that we can start to hold events across the state. We're going to be holding different fundraisers, fishing tournaments, barbecues, things like that, where we can get people to come together and talk about politics in a nonpartisan way, hopefully. And, we've got to raise some more funds. So visit danforarkansas.com. You can donate through my donor box on there, or you can donate through my Act Blue. Either of those means work. I have people that send me checks too. That works as well. So any kind of extra funds help right now. We're going to be using these funds to put on events across the state. So thank you guys so much, everyone who's been donating. I truly appreciate it. And of course, Annie, I know I never forget about you. You're awesome. Man, I just have such the most wonderful supporters. I'm so humbled and honored. Thank you so much. But that's kind of all I've got for right now. I don't have any events upcoming this next week. It looks like Jamie Harrison will be doing a Zoom meeting on May the 4th at 6:30 p.m. So as soon as I get the information for that, oh man, just 3 days away, I'll make sure I link that information so other people can participate in that as well and kind of hear and see what's going on with the Democratic National Party. But hey, if you guys have any questions, make sure you do reach out and I will answer any questions y'all have. Anytime you can give me a call, email, or message me on social media. Anything works. I love hearing from you guys. I love hearing your ideas. I've already actually got 2 different Arkansas constituent created bills that I'll be submitting as part of my 12 bills I submit per year created by Arkansans. So, keep sending me ideas. I love them. They're great. Thank you. And yeah, if you guys have any questions, reach out to me. I'm sorry this is such a short live stream. Oh my gosh. As we start getting events, thank you, Megan. I appreciate it. As we start getting events scheduled and going out, I'm sure these recaps will start to, or my update Q&As will start to be a little bit longer again. We'll try to get them back to around an hour each, but I don't really want them to be much longer than that. But, that just is going to happen as we start going to events and filling things up with more information. So thank you guys so much. I guess it's not super relevant to this campaign, but I'm still waiting for the opinion on our oral argument from our ballot access lawsuit from 2020. What I'm looking forward to, they could have thrown it out as moot and they didn't. It's been over a month. So I'm pretty sure they're going to give us a favorable opinion. And what I'm really hoping is that they will allow independent candidates to be able to collect their signatures in the 90-day window that is of choice to them, such as what the Libertarians and Green Party already do. They have an open 90-day window where independents have a fixed 90-day window. So hopefully they'll fix that. And as soon as I get the opinion, I'll let you all know. And hopefully we can get some more independents running for office as well. We need more people run for office, whether they're a Democrat or an independent, Green Party, whatever. We need to make sure that Republicans aren't dominating our state merely because they're running unopposed time and time again. But thank you guys so much. Y'all have a wonderful evening. May God bless y'all. May God bless America. And thank you so much for your support.